Good evening all and welcome back to Haunted Tales. Tonight we are traveling the forgotten asphalt arteries of America with 10 most disturbing true ghost stories from old American highways. These bone-chilling accounts come directly from truckers, late-night commuters and travelers who encountered something on our nation's oldest roadways that defies all explanation. Each story has been carefully verified through accident reports, missing person files, and decades of highway patrol records that reveal a terrifying pattern of supernatural encounters along America's most haunted stretches of road. These are not urban legends or campfire tales, but documented experiences from ordinary people whose lives were forever changed by what they witnessed on the midnight asphalt. If you are new here, make sure to subscribe to Haunted Tales for daily, true horror content that will haunt your dreams long after you close your eyes. Hit that notification bell so you never miss when the darkness calls from the highway's edge. Now, let us merge onto the ghostly lanes of America's most cursed highways, where the dead never truly rest, and every mile marker holds a secret that was never meant to be. They called it the Devil's Highway. For decades, U.S. Route 491 was officially known as U.S. Route 66, the sixth branch of the legendary Route 66. The number alone stirred unease, invoking biblical imagery of the beast. Truckers whispered about it over radios, locals refused to drive it at night, and preachers condemned it from pulpits. And while many highways earned reputations through accidents and folklore, few matched the bloody legacy that Route 666 left behind. Stretching through the barren deserts of New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, and Utah, the highway cut across vast stretches of land where civilization seemed to vanish. No streetlights, no gas stations for miles, just desert scrub, mesas looming against the horizon, and the weight of a silence so thick that it seemed alive. Those who traveled it after sunset spoke of a darkness deeper than anywhere else, as if the road swallowed not only light, but also reason. By the 1970s and 80s, Route 666 had become notorious for its high fatality rates. The press called it one of the most dangerous roads in America. Dozens of reports documented drivers vanishing off the road, cars colliding with phantom vehicles that never appeared in police reports, and accidents so violent that the wreckage barely resembled automobiles. Superstition spread quickly. Some claimed the devil himself stalked the asphalt. Others swore they had seen demonic hounds running alongside their cars, glowing eyes keeping pace at impossible speeds. The fear became so consuming that in 2003, after countless petitions, the highway was officially renumbered U.S. Route 491. Authorities claimed the change was to remove stigma, but truckers who had seen what lingered on that blacktop knew a new name would never erase the truth. One of the most chilling testimonies comes from a long-haul trucker named David, who drove Route 666 frequently in the late 1990s. David recalled one night when he was hauling freight from Gallup, New Mexico, heading north through the desert. The clock read just past 2 a.m., the road utterly empty. The moon had sunk below the mesas, leaving only the glow of his headlights cutting through the void. Then, in the distance, he saw what appeared to be another pair of headlights, blinding, fast, coming straight toward him. At first, he thought it was a reckless driver swerving into his lane. He blasted his horn, tightened his grip, and prepared to pull onto the shoulder. But the lights kept coming, closer, closer, until they consumed his windshield. And then, in an instant, they were gone. No impact, no vehicle passing by. Just darkness and the echo of his own ragged breathing. Shaken, David pulled over at the next rest area. When he walked into the restroom to splash cold water on his face, another trucker stood at the sink. David muttered, "Just saw some crazy lights on the road." The man didn't flinch. He simply nodded and said, "You're not the first. Won't be the last." Another legend speaks of a phantom semi-truck, an 18-wheeler black as coal, barreling down on unsuspecting drivers. Survivors of near-death encounters claim the truck would appear in their mirrors, headlights blazing, horn blaring, bearing down with murderous speed. But just as impact seemed inevitable, the truck would vanish, leaving the driver shaking and swerving on the shoulder. Police logs from the 1980s showed dozens of crash reports, where victims swore they were run off the road by a big rig with no driver. But when officers investigated, there were no skid marks from another vehicle, no evidence of another truck, just a wrecked car, an injured or dead driver, and the endless desert silence. As if the phantom vehicles weren't enough, travelers also speak of a spectral hitchhiker, a young woman in white, sometimes barefoot, seen along the shoulders of the Devil's Highway. Drivers who stopped to help her claim she would climb into the back seat, silent, her face pale and downcast. But before reaching the next town, she would vanish into thin air. One chilling account comes from a family in the 1970s who picked her up near Shiprock, New Mexico. The father later told police, "She was real, cold, but real. I looked in the rear view, and she was sitting there. But when we pulled into Gallup, the seat was empty." To this day, locals insist that the girl is the spirit of a young woman who died in a hit-and-run along the highway decades earlier. Even after the renaming to Route 491, the deaths haven't stopped. State patrols still record higher than average accident rates along its lonely stretches. And while skeptics blame poor road design and driver fatigue, locals shake their heads. They know what really prowls the blacktop after midnight. Truckers still whisper about headlights that appear where no car should be, about shadows crossing the road with no source, about voices coming over the CB radio in languages no one can place. They talk of waking up at rest stops with claw marks on their vehicles, and of dreams so vivid that they swear something followed them out of sleep. And perhaps most unsettling of all, the feeling that something unseen is always keeping pace with you. Drivers report glancing into their mirrors and catching the fleeting reflection of another face in the cab, sitting just behind them, eyes glowing faintly before disappearing when they look back. Call it superstition, call it folklore, call it fatigue-induced hallucination. But too many people have seen the same things, told the same stories, and buried the same bodies for coincidence to explain it all away. The Devil's Highway might have a new number now, but the evil stitched into its asphalt remains. The next time you find yourself in the Four Corners region, rolling down U.S. Route 491 after dark, remember this: numbers may change, but legends don't. Keep your eyes on the road, your mirrors steady, and your faith close, because out here, the devil doesn't wait for mistakes. He rides shotgun. Archer Avenue is not the kind of road you want to travel alone at night. It cuts through the southwest suburbs of Chicago, winding past dark woods, shadowed cemeteries, and silent stretches where the only sound is the hum of your engine. For decades, this old roadway has been the stage for one of the most enduring ghost stories in American folklore, the restless apparition known only as Resurrection Mary. Unlike fleeting legends, this story is different. It has been whispered by teenagers sneaking out for a joyride, by cab drivers late on their shift, and even by local police officers who reluctantly admit that something strange stalks these streets. The reports stretch back nearly a century, consistent in detail, chilling in delivery, and bound together by one road, Archer Avenue. The earliest whispers of Resurrection Mary trace back to the 1930s. Chicago was roaring in those days. Jazz, halls, dance clubs, and Prohibition-era secrets hidden behind heavy doors. Among the popular hangouts was the O. Henry Ballroom in Justice, Illinois, a hotspot where young men and women danced until the early hours. One night, so the legend goes, a young woman in a white dress attended the ballroom. Witnesses said she danced with several partners but kept mostly to herself, aloof, pale, but graceful. As the evening wound down, she accepted a ride from a young man she had met that night. The man drove her north along Archer Avenue, but as they neared Resurrection Cemetery, the girl asked to be let out. She stepped from the car, walked toward the locked gates of the cemetery, and in the dim light, she simply vanished. The next morning, the young man, shaken and confused, visited the girl's home address, only to be told by the family that she had died in a car accident months earlier. Her body rested in Resurrection Cemetery, less than a mile from where she disappeared. To understand why this story resonates so deeply, you need to picture the road itself. Archer Avenue is lined with landmarks that seem designed for ghost tales. Dense patches of forest, winding stretches of pavement with no lights, and at its heart, Resurrection Cemetery, where endless rows of gravestones stretch beneath looming oaks. Drivers who pass through late at night describe a creeping sensation, the way their headlights illuminate patches of mist that seem to hover just above the ground, the way the branches claw at the night sky like skeletal fingers. And always, the knowledge that countless witnesses swear they have seen a young woman wandering these roads, waiting for a ride that never truly ends. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence comes from Chicago cab drivers. Over the decades, multiple drivers have independently reported picking up a young woman on Archer Avenue. In the winter of 1973, a driver named Ralph claimed he picked up a girl near the ballroom. She was dressed in a white gown, her hair pale, blonde, her skin unusually cold. She gave him directions along Archer Avenue but insisted he stop at the gates of Resurrection Cemetery. As Ralph turned to collect his fare, the girl had vanished. No door opened, no footsteps, no trace of her at all. Ralph went on record with his story. Skeptics called it a fabrication, but his trembling voice and insistence on the details convinced many locals otherwise. He wasn't the only one. In 1979, another cab driver told police he had picked up a similar young woman. This time, she rode silently in the back seat until the car approached the cemetery. The driver swore she whispered, "This is where I need to go," before dissolving into thin air. The consistency of these accounts is what makes Resurrection Mary so haunting. Different men, different nights, same story. One of the most chilling moments in this legend occurred in the 1970s. Locals discovered that the heavy locked gates of Resurrection Cemetery bore scorched handprints, the iron bars twisted as if grabbed by something inhumanly strong. The incident drew newspaper coverage and police involvement. The church denied supernatural causes, insisting vandals had tampered with the gates. But witnesses who saw the marks firsthand swore they looked like hand impressions burned into the metal. The gates were repaired, but for those who believe, it was undeniable proof that Mary was not just a ghost, but a presence powerful enough to leave behind physical evidence. Not all stories of Resurrection Mary take place on the road. Some come from inside the ballrooms themselves. In the 1930s and 40s, several young men reported dancing with a mysterious blonde woman in a white dress at the O. Henry Ballroom. They described her as quiet, cool to the touch, and strangely detached. One man later swore that as the night ended and he offered her a ride, she directed him down Archer Avenue, only to disappear at the cemetery gates. The idea that Mary not only appears on the roadside but also mingles with the living before vanishing adds another dimension of terror. It suggests that she is not bound only to the cemetery, but to the places where her life ended abruptly, her spirit caught between joy and tragedy. Who was Resurrection Mary? Theories abound. Some say she was a young Polish immigrant who loved to dance and perished in a car accident after leaving the ballroom. Others believe she was a runaway struck by a car while walking home late at night. A few even tie her story to unsolved murders in the area during the Depression era. What unites these theories is the idea of a life cut short, of a young woman whose final moments left her tethered to Archer Avenue. Her white dress, her yearning for a final ride home, her inability to move beyond the gates of Resurrection Cemetery, all point to a restless spirit repeating the night of her death for eternity. Even today, reports continue. In 2001, a couple driving home late at night claimed to see a girl dart across Archer Avenue in front of their car. They slammed on the brakes, certain they had struck her. But when they jumped out to check, the road was empty. No girl, no body. Just tire marks on the pavement and the echo of their own panicked voices. Police dispatchers still occasionally receive calls about a woman in white wandering near Resurrection Cemetery. Officers rarely find anything, but some quietly admit that they avoid that stretch after dark unless duty forces them. Beyond visual encounters, many travelers describe something subtler, the sensation of being watched. Drivers recount how the temperature in their cars suddenly drops, how their radios emit bursts of static, how they feel eyes fixed on them from the back seat. Some even claim to catch Mary's reflection in their rearview mirrors, her pale face staring at them, vanishing. The instant they turn to look, One cab driver said it best. It's not just seeing her. It's knowing she's there, even when you don't. Resurrection Mary is more than a ghost story. She is a cultural fixture, a legend that has persisted for nearly 100 years. Unlike many tales that fade with time, her story only grows, stronger with each new generation of witnesses. Skeptics argue these are tricks of light, products of exhaustion, or recycled folklore. Yet the sheer number of testimonies, spanning decades and coming from ordinary, reluctant witnesses, makes dismissal difficult. Mary's story endures because it embodies universal fears, isolation, sudden death, and the idea that some souls never find peace. As with all true hauntings, there is no final answer. Was Mary truly a young woman struck down too soon, doomed to relive her last night forever? Or is she something darker, an echo of grief, a spirit that feeds on the fear of those who travel Archer Avenue? What we know is this: Archer Avenue remains one of the most haunted roads in America. Travelers still whisper about the pale hitchhiker who never makes it home. Cab drivers still hesitate to take fares near Resurrection Cemetery, and the gates of that cemetery still stand as silent witnesses to nearly a century of encounters. The next time you find yourself driving Archer Avenue, late at night, watch the roadside carefully. If you see a girl in white standing by the shoulder, cold mist curling around her ankles, think twice before you stop. Because once she steps into your car, there's no guarantee she'll leave it the way she came. And when you pass the cemetery gates, check your mirrors. She may already be gone, or she may still be sitting silently in the back seat, waiting, always waiting, for the ride that never ends. There is a road in northern New Jersey that locals whisper about in hushed tones. A stretch of two-lane blacktop that winds through dense, suffocating woods, where shadows swallow headlights, and the night feels heavier than anywhere else. That road is Clinton Road, and for decades, it has been called the most haunted road in America. It is only 10 miles long, running between Route 23 near West Milford and Upper Greenwood Lake. Yet those 10 miles hold more stories than entire highways. Phantom vehicles, occult gatherings, roadside specters, and something far darker that even the bravest avoid after sunset. But of all the legends tied to Clinton Road, none is more chilling than the story of the ghost boy at the bridge. Driving Clinton Road at night feels unnatural. The forest presses in tight, branches clawing at the night sky, forming a tunnel that devours light. There are no street lamps, no houses for long stretches. Your headlights carve out only a narrow sliver of visibility, while beyond them lies nothing but blackness. Local police will tell you about the number of accidents on Clinton Road, cars plunging into ditches, drivers swerving to avoid figures that vanish on impact. But what unnerves most people is the silence. No birds, no crickets, only the low hum of your engine and the crunch of tires against cracked asphalt. Many say the silence itself feels like a warning. And then you reach the bridge. The bridge on Clinton Road is ordinary by daylight, a short weathered overpass near a small stream. But at night it becomes the center of one of New Jersey's most disturbing legends. The story goes that if you stop on the bridge, put your car in neutral and toss a coin into the water, a ghostly boy will return it. Some witnesses claim they felt a cold hand brush against theirs as the coin was placed back on the road. Others say they saw ripples in the water, though nothing had moved. The legend's origin is tragic. Local lore tells of a young boy who was struck and killed by a passing car while playing near the bridge decades ago. His restless spirit, they say, lingers there still, forever bound to the place of his death. One of the earliest documented encounters dates back to the 1960s. A group of teenagers, testing the legend, stopped at the bridge late one night. They tossed several coins into the water, laughing nervously. Moments later, they claimed the coins landed back at their feet, wet, gleaming in the moonlight. Skeptics dismissed it as a prank. But over the years, the story repeated itself, told by dozens of drivers, hikers, and thrill-seekers. In the 1980s, a man named Carl reported stopping at the bridge with his girlfriend. They tossed a quarter into the water. Moments later, Carl felt something icy close around his hand, though nothing was visible. Terrified, they drove off, but when Carl checked his palm hours later, He swore it bore the imprint of a small child's fingers. More recently, in 2005, two young men documented their visit to the bridge online. They tossed several coins into the stream, waited, and began to hear faint splashes, like footsteps in water, though the surface was undisturbed. Then, they claimed, one of their coins appeared on the hood of their car, as though placed there intentionally. But the ghost boy is not the only spirit haunting Clinton Road. Drivers also report being stalked by a phantom truck. The story is always the same. Headlights appear suddenly in the rearview mirror, blinding, tailgating, forcing drivers to speed faster and faster. But when they finally pull over to let the vehicle pass, the lights vanish. No engine, no sound, no truck. Some speculate the phantom truck is tied to the countless accidents on the road, a spectral echo of the many vehicles that never made it safely across its winding turns. Others believe it is something darker, an embodiment of fear itself, preying on those who dare to linger too long. Adding to Clinton Road's infamy are the Cross Castle ruins, the remains of a mansion built in 1905 by Richard Cross. By the mid-20th century, the structure had fallen into decay, becoming a gathering place for vandals, cultists, and thrill-seekers. Local police reports from the 1970s mention strange activity near the ruins, fires, markings on the walls, and rituals believed to be satanic in nature. Witnesses claimed to see hooded figures in the woods, chanting in the dead of night. Some reported stumbling across animal carcasses, mutilated in ways too deliberate to be natural. Today, the ruins are largely inaccessible, but the legend remains, tied to Clinton Road. Some believe the ghostly phenomena along the highway are not just restless spirits, but the result of rituals that stain the land with something darker than death. The ghost boy at the bridge may be Clinton Road's most famous specter, but he is far from alone. Over the decades, travelers have reported strange creatures, shadowy, animal-like figures darting across the road, described by some as cryptid-like beings with glowing eyes. Vanishing figures, hikers encountering pale apparitions on the roadside, which dissolve when approached. Temperature drops, cars suddenly filling with icy air, their windows fogging from the inside, even in the heat of summer. Disembodied voices, whispers heard through open car windows, often repeating drivers' names. Each encounter deepens the road's reputation, making Clinton Road less a place and more a corridor of the supernatural. Though law enforcement rarely goes on record about paranormal claims, Clinton Road has long been a point of unease even for police. In the 1990s, an officer admitted anonymously to a local paper that he avoided the road whenever possible. He described responding to multiple calls about suspicious vehicles or pedestrians that simply vanished before patrol cars arrived. Residents nearby also speak of the dread that lingers. One woman who lived near Clinton Road in the 1970s claimed she would often hear the sound of a child crying near the bridge at night. She would rush outside with a flashlight, only to find nothing but silence and the trickling stream. What makes Clinton Road so terrifying is not just one ghost story, it's the accumulation of dread. Every mile carries another rumor, another shadow, another tragic ending. Unlike Resurrection Mary, whose appearances follow a familiar script, Clinton Road is unpredictable. Some nights you might find only silence. Other nights you might bring home a memory that never lets you sleep again. Locals tell newcomers never to stop on the road after dark, especially near the bridge. Never toss a coin into the water. Never acknowledge the figures you see in the trees. And above all, never ignore the feeling that you are not alone, because on Clinton Road, you never are. Is the ghost boy at the bridge real? Is he a child trapped in an endless loop, returning coins to strangers as if still longing for human contact? Or is the story just one of many meant to keep teenagers from loitering on dangerous roads? Skeptics argue it's all imagination, fueled by fear and suggestion. But those who have driven Clinton Road at night will tell you there is something there, something more than shadows, more than stories. The truth is this: Clinton Road has earned its reputation not through a single account, but through decades of them. Too many people have seen too much to dismiss it all as myth. So if you ever find yourself on that lonely road in northern New Jersey, remember this. When you reach the bridge, keep your coins in your pocket. Do not stop. Do not look into the stream. Because if you do, you may just feel a hand colder than death brush against yours, and you may carry that chill with you forever. Highway 2 in northern Minnesota stretches for hundreds of miles through pine forests, frozen lakes, and endless fields where silence settles heavy at night. In winter, snow piles against the shoulders, and the air grows so cold that even sound seems to freeze. The road is long and lonely, a place where headlights illuminate nothing but white mist and the skeletal outlines of trees. To drive Highway 2 at night is to confront emptiness, and yet, many who have traveled its blacktop insist it is not empty at all. For decades, a figure has haunted this stretch of road, a woman, pale and alone, standing by the roadside with her thumb extended as though seeking a ride. Her dress is described as light-colored, sometimes white, sometimes faded blue. Her expression is blank, her hair dark and wet as though she has just pulled herself from a river. Truckers, students, and late-night travelers have all seen her, and some have stopped. One of the earliest accounts dates back to the 1950s, when a trucker named Harold was hauling timber through the bitter cold of a January night. He spotted the woman just past the outskirts of Bemidji, shivering by the snowbank. Against his better judgment, he pulled over and opened the passenger door. She climbed inside without a word, her skin icy to the touch. Harold asked where she was headed, but she only whispered, "East." He drove in silence, the heater blasting, his breath visible in the cab despite the warmth. When he reached the next town and pulled over to let her out, she was gone. The seat beside him was empty, though frost lingered on the glass where her breath should have been. Reports like Harold's multiplied over the years. Drivers described the same woman, in the same place, always vanishing before her destination. Some said she would appear again just a few miles down the road, as if her journey never truly began. Police dispatchers quietly admitted to receiving dozens of calls about a woman in distress along Highway 2. But every time patrol cars responded, they found nothing but tire tracks in the snow and silence in the trees. One chilling detail unites many of the accounts. The woman always seems wet, her clothing damp, her hair plastered to her face. In some tellings, she drips water onto the seat of the car, vanishing and leaving only a cold puddle behind. Folklorists believe her spirit may be tied to one of the rivers or lakes that border Highway 2, perhaps the site of a drowning or a fatal crash into icy waters. Local legends whisper that she was a young bride killed on her wedding night, her car plunging through the guardrail into the river. Others insist she was a hitchhiker murdered by a passing stranger, her body dumped in the woods. Whatever the origin, her presence is always the same, searching, waiting, never arriving. In 1979, a college student named Mark told reporters that he picked up a girl on Highway 2 while driving home from Duluth. She wore a pale blue dress and seemed exhausted, barely able to speak. When he asked her name, she only shook her head. As they neared Grand Rapids, she suddenly turned to him and said, "I can't go any further." Confused, Mark slowed the car, and in that moment, she vanished. His car swerved off the shoulder, and he barely avoided hitting a pine. He later swore that the passenger seat was still damp when he finally stopped shaking enough to check. Not every story ends quietly. In 1994, a young couple driving west on Highway 2 claimed the woman appeared directly in their headlights. The driver swerved violently, convinced he was about to hit her, but the figure passed straight through the hood of the car. The couple pulled to the side of the road, trembling, and insisted they both felt the jolt of impact, even though nothing had touched the vehicle. When police arrived, there was no one on the road, no footprints in the snow, only two terrified witnesses who refused to ever drive that stretch again. Perhaps the most unnerving account came from a sheriff's deputy in 2007. Late at night, he spotted a woman standing by the roadside, waving frantically. He pulled over, rolled down the window, and asked if she needed help. She leaned in close, her face pale and hollow-eyed, and whispered, "They left me here." The deputy got out of his car instantly, circling around with his flashlight, but There was no one there. He later admitted to colleagues that the interior of his cruiser smelled faintly of river water for days afterward. The ghost of Highway 2 has become so ingrained in local lore that some residents avoid the road after dark altogether. Truckers pass along warnings to rookies. If you see a woman in pale clothes by the roadside, do not stop. She does not belong to this world. Paranormal researchers have visited the stretch countless times, some claiming to record sudden drops in temperature, unexplained EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, capturing faint whispers like, "Help me," or "I'm cold." Skeptics argue these are tricks of imagination, the byproduct of fatigue and suggestion on a lonely road. But those who have encountered her insist otherwise. What makes the story of Highway 2 so disturbing is its persistence. The legend has remained unchanged for nearly 70 years. The same woman, the same haunting, the same vanishing act that leaves witnesses shaken and pale. Unlike other ghost stories that evolve with time, this one holds steady, as if her spirit is locked in a loop she cannot escape. Late-night travelers describe more than just sightings. They speak of dread creeping into their bones, of radios bursting into static, of headlights dimming inexplicably as they approach the stretch where she appears. Some say they have driven for miles before realizing their windshield was fogged on the inside, as though another breath lingered beside them in the car. A few even claim to have glanced in the rearview mirror and seen her sitting silently in the back seat, eyes downcast, vanishing when they turned around. The fear that Highway 2 inspires is not the fear of being attacked or chased. It is the fear of being alone with something that should not exist. The idea that at any moment, a pale figure might appear on the roadside, waiting, pleading for a ride she can never finish. Those who know the legend caution travelers. If you see her, keep driving. Do not stop. Do not offer her a seat. Do not look too long into the shadows by the shoulder, because if you do, you may find her climbing into your car, her damp clothing staining your seat, her cold presence lingering long after she is gone. And when you finally arrive at your destination, you may look back and find the seat still wet, the air still heavy with the smell of river water, and the certainty that she will be waiting for you again the next time you take Highway 2. The road remains restless, a place where the past refuses to fade. Some call her the Lady of Highway 2, others the Drowned Bride, others simply the Hitchhiker. But whatever name you give her, she endures, step by step, mile by mile, always searching for a ride home that will never come. Texas Highway 87 cuts through vast open land where the sky feels endless and the horizon swallows the road in every direction. At night, the darkness here is absolute, broken only by the glow of distant oil rigs or the rare shimmer of headlights. The wind carries a dry, metallic taste, and when storms roll across the plains, lightning illuminates the empty blacktop in split-second flashes that make the world seem unfamiliar. This is a road where silence feels unnatural, and yet, silence is never truly what drivers find. For decades, travelers on Highway 87 have spoken of a presence that lurks in the night, an entity that announces itself with a pair of headlights, appearing in the rearview mirror. At first, it looks like any other truck, big, heavy, barreling forward with impossible speed. But those who have encountered it insist there is no driver, no engine, no sound of tires grinding against asphalt. Just blinding lights rushing closer and closer until suddenly, without warning, they vanish. The phantom truck of Highway 87 has haunted generations of drivers, and the stories that surround it are as consistent as they are terrifying. One of the earliest reports dates back to the 1960s, when a young couple was driving eastbound late, one summer night. They saw headlights cresting in the distance, drawing closer, far faster than seemed possible. The truck bore down on them, horn blaring, lights flooding their car with white fire. The couple swerved violently, heartbeats hammering, certain they would be crushed beneath its wheels. But when they braced for impact, there was nothing. The truck had disappeared. When they looked in the mirror, the road behind them was empty. The woman later told friends that she could still feel the vibration of its horn in her bones long after the road returned to silence. Stories like theirs multiplied. In 1978, A trucker named Manuel reported being chased for nearly 3 miles by the phantom truck. It appeared suddenly behind him, tailgating so close he thought its bumper would scrape his trailer. He pushed his rig faster, sweat dripping down his neck, but no matter how fast he drove, the lights stayed locked behind him, unblinking, relentless. Then, as he crested a hill, the truck vanished. Manuel pulled over, shaking, his hands locked tight around the wheel. He swore he smelled burning rubber, even though his own tires were intact, as if something had left the road in front of him. Invisible, yet undeniable. Local folklore ties the phantom truck to a series of fatal accidents along Highway 87 in the mid-20th century. This stretch of road was notorious for collisions between passenger cars and 18-wheelers hauling freight across Texas. The deaths were often brutal, sudden, and numerous. Some believe the phantom truck is a remnant of one such crash, a hitchhikers vehicle caught in a loop of destruction, doomed to replay its deadly chase forever. Others whisper that it is not tied to one truck at all, but a manifestation of the violence and fear that has seeped into the asphalt from decades of tragedy. But the phantom truck is not the only ghostly presence on Highway 87. Some drivers report seeing children along the roadside, spectral figures that appear and vanish with the same swiftness as the truck. The children are said to be small, dressed in outdated clothing, their faces pale and vacant. In the 1980s, a woman named Elena recounted stopping her car late at night when she saw what she thought was a young boy standing near the shoulder, clutching a stuffed bear. Concerned, she pulled over and rolled down her window to ask if he was lost. The boy turned his head slowly toward her, eyes hollow, and before she could speak again, he was gone. The bear fell into the dirt and dissolved, like smoke before her eyes. There are theories about these children. Some point to an old school bus accident rumored to have occurred near the highway decades ago. A crash that was never properly recorded in newspapers, but persists in local oral history. Others believe the children are tied to migrants who perished along the route during dust storms in the 1930s, their spirits wandering the land, unable to find rest. Whatever their origin, their sudden appearances leave drivers shaken, questioning whether they saw something real or a trick of exhaustion. The strangest accounts blend the two legends together. In 1992, a driver named Travis claimed he was chased by the phantom truck for several miles. Terrified, he floored the gas, his small sedan rattling under the strain. Just as the truck's lights blazed brighter in his mirror, he swore he saw the figures of children standing on the shoulder of the road ahead, lined up in silence as though watching. He braced for the impossible, impact with the truck or collision with the children. But when he reached the spot, both the truck and the children were gone. He pulled to the side of the road, trembling so badly he could hardly light his cigarette. It was like they were connected, he later told a local paranormal group, like one warning led into another. Even law enforcement officers have had brushes with the unexplained along Highway 87. In 2003, a sheriff's deputy patrolling near Lubbock reported seeing headlights coming fast behind him. He pulled his cruiser to the side, expecting to ticket a reckless driver, but the lights never passed. They simply dissolved into the night. The deputy admitted he sat there for nearly 20 minutes, scanning the empty horizon, unable to explain what he had just witnessed. The landscape itself seems to contribute to the terror. Highway 87 runs through regions of Texas where storms sweep across the plains without warning, lightning fracturing the sky in sheets of white fire. Drivers caught in these storms often report that the phantom truck appears more frequently though it thrives in chaos. Some say the children are also seen more often during heavy rain, their figures illuminated for an instant in the glare of lightning before vanishing. Paranormal researchers suggest that weather, with its bursts of electromagnetic energy, may amplify whatever forces linger on the road. Skeptics argue that the phantom truck is nothing more than a combination of exhaustion, misjudged distances on dark highways, and the fear that comes with isolation. The children, they say, are the byproduct of stories passed around campfires, urban legends that make long drives feel more dangerous than they are. Yet even skeptics grow quiet when they hear how similar the accounts remain, decade after decade, from witnesses who never met and had nothing to gain by speaking out. There is something about Highway 87 that resists dismissal. It is not just one or two ghost stories. It is a tapestry of dread, woven from dozens of encounters, all pointing to a road where the veil between the living and the dead is dangerously thin. Travelers avoid it at night when they can, especially the stretch near the old river crossing, where many of the sightings occur. Truckers whisper warnings to newcomers. If the lights appear behind you, do not slow down, do not pull over, and above all, do not look directly into your mirror. And if you see a child by the roadside, do not stop. Keep your eyes forward. Keep driving. Highway 87 remains restless, scarred by tragedy and steeped in mystery. Some say the phantom truck still hunts for victims, its horn echoing from the void. Others say the children linger, waiting for someone to guide them home, their small faces lit only by passing headlights. But most agree on one thing. If you find yourself alone on that road, with nothing but miles of blacktop stretching ahead and the night pressing down like a weight, you are not alone. Something else is out there, pacing you step for step, wheel for wheel, waiting for the moment when you are too tired, too distracted, too vulnerable to escape. And if you're unlucky, the last thing you'll ever see may be a pair of headlights, flooding your rearview mirror, brighter and brighter until they consume everything. Nevada's Route 375 stretches for 98 miles across the barren desert, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through silence and sand. Locals call it the extraterrestrial highway, a name born from its proximity to the restricted edges of Area 51 and the countless UFO sightings reported along its length. But while lights in the sky draw tourists and skeptics alike, those who live near this desolate road will tell you the highway holds other secrets, secrets that are far darker and closer to the ground. The desert has a way of making travelers uneasy. At night, the landscape becomes an endless void, the stars blinding above, the road stretching into nothing. Your headlights cut a narrow path, but beyond them is only blackness and the sound of your own tires humming against the cracked pavement. Isolation settles in quickly, and it's in this isolation that people see things they cannot explain. Not just glowing orbs above the mountains or strange craft hovering silently, but figures walking the roadside, appearing and vanishing, as though born from the desert itself. One of the most persistent legends of Route 375 is that of the desert drifters. Drivers describe them as tall, gaunt figures dressed in dark clothing, sometimes wearing hats or coats far too heavy for the desert heat. They appear at the shoulder of the road without warning, pale faces briefly illuminated by headlights. Some raise their hands as if to flag down cars. Others simply stand and watch. But the moment a vehicle passes, they dissolve into the night, leaving no footprints in the dust, no evidence that they were ever there. A trucker named William recounted such an encounter in the early 1990s. He was hauling freight through Nevada, heading north along Route 375 just after midnight. The desert was calm, the radio silent. Then, in the distance, he spotted what he thought was a man walking along the shoulder. As his headlights swept over the figure, he saw a thin face, eyes like black pits, and a mouth twisted as though forming words. William slowed slightly, considering pulling over, but before he could decide, the figure turned its head toward him. He later swore its gaze pierced straight through him, colder than any look he'd ever felt. And then, it was gone. The shoulder was empty, the desert untouched. William drove on, shaken, his hands trembling on the wheel. Stories like his grew common. In 2002, a family traveling eastbound claimed to see 3 figures walking in single file along the roadside, their movements jerky and unnatural, almost like marionettes. When the family slowed to get a better look, the figures stopped moving altogether, turning in unison toward the car. Terrified, the driver accelerated, and within seconds the figures had vanished in the rearview mirror. The children in the back seat insisted the figures had no faces. Adding to the dread of Route 375 are the strange lights that seem to follow travelers along the road. These are not the distant aerial phenomena usually tied to UFO lore, but lights at ground level, moving alongside cars at impossible speeds. Drivers describe them as orbs of pale white or green, sometimes darting across the road, sometimes pacing vehicles for miles. When approached, the lights vanish instantly, leaving behind nothing but the echo of unease. One chilling account came from a woman named Angela in 2010. Driving alone from Tonopah to Rachel, she noticed a faint glow in her side mirror. At first, she thought it was another vehicle cresting a hill, but the glow grew brighter, moving closer until it floated directly beside her car. She described it as a sphere of greenish-white light, silent, keeping pace with her for nearly 10 miles. Desperate, she pulled onto the shoulder, but the moment she stopped, the orb vanished. The next morning, Angela discovered her passenger side door covered in fine dust, streaked in patterns that looked almost like fingerprints too large to be human. The highway's most infamous story, however, is the tale of the phantom hitchhiker. Much like the vanishing hitchhiker legends from other states, Route 375 has its own variant, but darker. Witnesses claim to see a young woman in outdated clothing, often described as wearing a long skirt and a scarf, standing by the roadside, her thumb extended. Those who stop say she climbs into the back seat without speaking, her presence unnerving but strangely compelling. But before the driver reaches the next town, she disappears, leaving behind only the faint scent of desert sage and, in some cases, a smear of dust on the upholstery, as though her form was made of earth itself. In 1996, a man named Robert reported this exact encounter. He told police that he picked up a woman near mile marker 29, late at night. She sat silently in the back seat, her face obscured by shadows. When he tried to ask where she was headed, she only whispered, "Home." Minutes later, she was gone. Robert was so shaken that he pulled into the town of Rachel and refused to drive further until daylight. The detail that unsettled him most was the patch of dirt left on his back seat. Dirt he swore he had cleaned thoroughly before his trip. Skeptics tie these stories to fatigue, desert mirages, and the suggestive power of the road's ominous reputation. After all, Route 375 has long been a magnet for the strange. UFO hunters flock to it, paranormal researchers investigate it, and thrill seekers drive it, hoping to glimpse the unexplained. Yet the consistency of the reports, strange figures, vanishing hitchhikers, glowing orbs, cannot be dismissed so easily. Too many people, from truckers to families to police officers, have reported the same experiences. Locals in the small town of Rachel, the only real settlement along the highway, quietly admit that they hear the same stories again and again. Travelers stumbling into town pale and shaken, describing figures in the desert or lights that pursued them across miles of empty road. Bartenders at the Little Ale Inn, the town's UFO-themed diner, will serve you coffee with a smile but warn you not to linger on Route 375 after midnight. They'll say it's the isolation, the desert playing tricks. But their eyes betray something else. The knowledge that not all the stories are exaggerations. Some researchers speculate that the phenomena along Route 375 may not be spirits in the traditional sense, but something stranger. The proximity to Area 51 fuels theories of experiments gone wrong, of energy fields warping perception, even of beings not of this earth crossing into our reality. Others argue that the road itself is cursed, that the land beneath it is scarred by violence, displacement, and secrets buried too deep to ever stay hidden. Whatever the cause, the result is the same. Travelers leave the highway with stories that follow them for the rest of their lives. Route 375 remains a road of contradictions. By day, it is barren and quiet, a scenic drive through desert emptiness. By night, it becomes something else entirely, a stage where the human mind collides with forces it cannot understand. Figures that should not exist walk its shoulders. Lights that defy explanation race alongside speeding cars. Voices whisper from the silence. And sometimes, if you are unlucky, something climbs into the back seat of your car and rides with you for miles. The extraterrestrial highway draws visitors with promises of UFOs and otherworldly lights, but those who drive it after dark discover that the most disturbing encounters are not in the sky. They are right there on the asphalt, pacing your car step for step, watching from the desert as you pass. And when you finally leave Route 375 behind, you may find the silence of the desert has followed you home, carrying with it the memory of a figure on the roadside, arm outstretched, waiting eternally for a ride she will never finish. Archer Avenue in Illinois winds south of Chicago through a stretch of land that feels older than the city itself. By daylight, it looks ordinary enough, a two-lane road lined with trees, fields, and the occasional stone wall. But when the sun sets, Archer Avenue changes. The shadows lengthen, the air grows heavier, and the silence takes on a presence of its own. Travelers say it feels like a corridor between worlds, a place where the living brush against the dead. This stretch of highway is flanked by cemeteries, old churches, and patches of forest that have swallowed more history than most towns ever record. Over the decades, countless drivers have reported ghostly figures along its edges. Nuns gliding silently between trees, phantom funeral processions crossing the pavement, and lone women appearing in headlights before vanishing into the night. But one story rises above all others. The story of Resurrection Mary, the most famous vanishing hitchhiker in American folklore. The legend begins in the 1930s, when tales first spread of a young woman in a pale dress seen walking Archer Avenue late at night. She was always described as beautiful, blonde, and distant, her eyes lowered as she walked the roadside. Sometimes she would wave for a ride, other times she simply appeared in the middle of the lane, forcing cars to swerve. And in nearly every account, she vanished before the journey ended, sometimes stepping out at the gates of Resurrection Cemetery, sometimes fading right out of the seat beside the driver. One of the earliest and most famous encounters was reported in 1939 by a man named Jerry Pallas. He claimed to have met a young woman at a Chicago ballroom, danced with her all evening, and even kissed her goodnight. She asked for a ride home, and he agreed. As they drove down Archer Avenue, she directed him toward Resurrection Cemetery. When he stopped the car, she stepped out, walked toward the locked gates, and disappeared through them as if the iron bars were smoke. Jerry insisted the story was true until the day he died. Since then, Resurrection Mary has been seen by dozens, perhaps hundreds, of drivers. Taxi drivers in particular have told the same story again and again, picking up a young woman in a light dress, quiet and polite, who asks to be taken along Archer Avenue. She sits silently for most of the ride, sometimes staring out the window, sometimes fiddling nervously with her hands. But when the car nears the cemetery, she asks to stop, and when the driver turns to collect her fare, the seat is empty. The door never opens, the air never shifts, but she is gone. In 1973, a cab driver named Ralph was so disturbed by his encounter that he reported it to the police. He picked up a woman who fit Mary's description perfectly and drove her several miles down Archer Avenue. When he slowed to let her out near the cemetery gates, she simply vanished. Ralph swore the seatbelt buckle still bore the indentation of her weight. Others have seen her without ever stopping. In 1980, a man driving late at night swerved violently when he saw a young woman step directly into his headlights. He was certain he had struck her. He leapt from his car, trembling, but there was no body, no trace of impact. His bumper was untouched, the road empty. All that lingered was the echo of her face, pale and fleeting, burned into his memory. But Resurrection Mary is not the only haunting on Archer Avenue. The road seems saturated with apparitions, as though something about the land itself refuses to let the dead rest. Near St. James Sag Bridge, travelers report seeing ghostly monks marching in procession, their heads bowed, their forms glowing faintly in the night. Locals whisper that these spirits are tied to the old church nearby, their rituals continuing long after the living congregation moved on. Drivers have also described phantom funeral processions, long lines of horse-drawn carriages moving slowly across the road before dissolving into the night air. Others speak of spectral nuns walking silently in pairs, their faces obscured, their presence chilling enough to silence radios and dim headlights. These sightings stretch back generations, reinforcing the belief that Archer Avenue is not haunted by a single ghost, but by an entire community of the dead. Skeptics argue that the stories are born from fear, fatigue, and the natural eeriness of a road lined with cemeteries. But what unnerves believers is the consistency. The woman always appears near the same places. The monks are always seen at the same bridge. The funeral processions always cross at the same point. These are not random tales spun from imagination. They are patterns, repeated again and again by witnesses who often have nothing to gain by speaking out. Paranormal researchers who have investigated Archer Avenue describe sudden drops in temperature, malfunctions in equipment, and EVPs that capture faint cries or the sound of footsteps pacing on gravel. One team reported that their camera shut off entirely when they approached the gates of Resurrection Cemetery, only to turn back on after they had left. The footage that survived showed faint white shapes darting between the gravestones too, quick and indistinct to explain. For those who live nearby, Archer Avenue has become a road of caution. Parents warn their children not to walk it at night. Taxi drivers share whispered warnings about the pale woman in the back seat. Even police officers, usually unwilling to acknowledge the paranormal, admit quietly that they've had more than one report from drivers claiming to have hit a woman near the cemetery, only to find no body and no evidence on their cars. The haunting of Archer Avenue speaks to something deeper than a single ghost story. It is about the fear of the road itself, the long, dark stretches where headlights illuminate only a small sliver of the unknown, the silence pressing in from both sides, the knowledge that the land you are passing has buried countless souls. It is about the thin veil between life and death, and how, in some places, that veil seems to tear. Resurrection Mary may be the most famous, but she is only part of a larger chorus. Archer Avenue is a place where the past lingers, where every shadow may hide a story, and where the dead are never far behind the living. The road itself feels alive, pulsing with memory, waiting for the next traveler to add another chapter to its haunted history. So if you ever find yourself driving down Archer Avenue late at night, keep your eyes on the road ahead. Do not swerve for figures in the dark. Do not pick up strangers by the roadside, no matter how desperate they seem. And if you glance into your mirror and see a pale woman sitting quietly in your back seat, remember this: she is only going one way. Her destination has never changed. And once you pass the gates of Resurrection Cemetery, you may not be the one who decides when she leaves. Clinton Road in New Jersey is only 10 miles long, but for generations it has been called the most haunted stretch of asphalt in America. Winding through dense forest in West Milford, the road looks deceptively ordinary by day. The trees rise, high and tight on both sides, their shadows swallowing the sunlight. But at night, Clinton Road becomes something else entirely. A corridor of darkness where headlights feel too dim, radios crackle with static, and time itself seems to stretch. Travelers describe a silence so heavy it presses on the skin, a silence broken only by the creak of branches or the sudden snap of something unseen moving just beyond the tree line. For decades, Clinton Road has been a magnet for ghost stories, police reports, and whispered warnings among locals. It is not tied to a single legend, but to many, each one stranger than the last. Perhaps the most famous is the story of the ghost boy at the bridge. The tale is simple, yet chilling. If you stop on the bridge that crosses Dead Man's Curve and toss a coin into the water, the spirit of a boy will throw it back. According to local lore, the boy was killed in the 1970s, struck by a car while standing on the bridge. Some say he drowned beneath it instead, pulled down into the dark water. Whatever the truth, his ghost is said to linger, restless, waiting for company. Witnesses describe tossing coins only to hear a sharp splash seconds later, the same coin, breaking the surface of the water and landing back at their feet. Skeptics call it coincidence or trickery, but those who have stood on that bridge at midnight swear it feels different, that the air grows colder, the shadows thicker, and the sound of the splash comes from nowhere it should. Yet the ghost boy is far from the only spirit said to haunt Clinton Road. Drivers tell of a phantom truck that appears suddenly in the rearview mirror, its headlights blazing. The truck roars after them, tailgating dangerously close, the roar of its engine echoing through the trees. Just when impact feels inevitable, the truck vanishes. It has been reported since at least the 1950s, and the stories have never changed. Some believe it is the spirit of a trucker killed on the road, doomed to chase drivers forever. Others insist it is something darker, an entity that feeds on fear, appearing only to drive its victims into panic. One driver in the 1990s told police he nearly crashed after being chased by such a truck. He swore he could feel the heat of its headlights burning into his mirrors. But when he pulled over, gasping for breath, there was nothing but silence and empty road stretching behind him. His hands were still shaking when he filed the report. Then there are the tales of strange creatures, animals that defy explanation. Wolves with glowing red eyes, deer that walk on hind legs like men, and shadows that dart across the road faster than any living thing could move. In the 1980s, a group of teenagers claimed to see what they described as a hellhound, a massive black dog with eyes like burning coals that stood in the middle of the road and would not move. When they tried to drive forward, it simply vanished, leaving claw marks gouged deep into the pavement where its paws had been. Adding to the road's sinister reputation are persistent rumors of cult activity. Locals whisper about abandoned buildings, hidden in the forest, where satanic symbols are scrawled on stone walls and melted candles sit in dusty circles. Some claim to have stumbled upon hooded figures gathering deep in the woods at night, their chanting echoing through the trees. Whether these are real occult groups or simply teenagers playing at ritual, the stories have left a mark on Clinton Road's identity. Police officers who patrol the area admit they've found evidence of strange gatherings, makeshift altars, scorched earth, animal bones arranged in patterns that feel more intentional than natural. The terror of Clinton Road is amplified by the fact that real violence has occurred there. In 1983, the body of a man was discovered in the woods near the road, stuffed into a garbage bag. Investigators determined he had been a victim of a mob hit, and his killer was later revealed to be Richard Kuklinski, the notorious hitman known as the Iceman. Kuklinski himself admitted to dumping bodies in the woods near Clinton Road, choosing it for its isolation and the way sound seemed to vanish into the trees. The knowledge that true murderers once stalked its length only deepens the unease of traveling it after dark. First-hand accounts make Clinton Road's reputation undeniable. In 1999, a woman named Diane reported driving alone at night when she saw a figure standing at the side of the road. It was small, childlike, and motionless. She slowed, thinking it might be a lost child, but when her headlights swept over it, she saw the face was pale, hollow-eyed, and grinning impossibly wide. She slammed the accelerator, heart hammering, and when she looked back in the mirror, the figure was gone. In 2007, two friends claimed they stopped at the bridge to test the ghost boy legend. They tossed coins into the water, laughing nervously. Moments later, one of the coins clattered onto the asphalt behind them, though neither had moved. Startled, they scrambled into their car, but before they could start the engine, they both swore they heard a child's laughter echoing from beneath the bridge. They drove off without looking back. Not all encounters are so direct. Many drivers speak of the oppressive silence, the way radios cut out suddenly, or headlights dim without reason. Some say their cell phones lose power entirely on Clinton Road, even when fully charged moments before. Paranormal investigators have recorded sudden drops in temperature, electronic malfunctions, and faint EVPs that sound like whispers calling from the tree line. The strangest detail is how time seems to distort on the road. Several travelers claim they drove the length of Clinton Road in what felt like minutes, only to discover hours had passed. Others say the opposite, that they spent what felt like an hour driving it, only to realize mere minutes had gone by. Skeptics chalk this up to disorientation in the dark, but those who've lived it insist it was something more, as though the road itself bends time to its will. The mixture of folklore, real violence, and persistent unexplained encounters makes Clinton Road more than just another haunted highway. It is a place where every shadow feels alive, where every bend in the road might reveal something you cannot explain. The ghost boy waits at the bridge, his legend tied to innocence lost. The phantom truck roars in the darkness, its pursuit unrelenting. The creatures of the forest stalk silently, half animal, half nightmare. And somewhere among the trees, real rituals have been performed, their echoes lingering in the silence. Clinton Road is a reminder that some places collect darkness the way others collect light. Its legends endure because the road feels wrong, in a way you cannot dismiss. You can drive it 100 times and never see a thing, but the one time you do, it will stay with you forever. A splash in the water, a truck in your mirror, a child's laugh where no child should be. If you ever find yourself on Clinton Road after midnight, remember this. Do not stop on the bridge. Do not look too long into the trees. And if headlights appear in your mirror, brighter and brighter, until they blind you, pray they belong to something real. Because if they don't, you may discover what generations of travelers already know. That Clinton Road is not a road at all, but a boundary, where the living and the dead walk side by side. Route 2A in northern Maine winds through miles of dense forest, swamps, and remote countryside where the air feels heavy with silence. It's a narrow two-lane highway, patched and cracked by decades of harsh winters. To drive it in daylight is unnerving enough. There are few towns, fewer gas stations, and almost no signs of civilization once you leave the main arteries. But to drive it at night is something else entirely. The forest presses close on both sides, black pines leaning in like sentinels, and the road disappears into an ocean of darkness. For decades, truckers and travelers alike have called Route 2A cursed, a road haunted by the dead and watched over by something that never sleeps. The stories here go back nearly a century. Route 2A was once the main artery for logging trucks hauling heavy loads of timber down from the North Woods. The road was narrow, treacherous, and slick with ice for much of the year. Countless accidents occurred on its blind curves and icy bridges. Truckers would lose control, jackknife, or plunge into the woods. Many never made it out alive. Old-timers say the forest is still littered with rusting frames of rigs long since swallowed by trees, silent memorials to men who died with their hands still gripping the wheel. It's no wonder that Route 2A has become infamous not only for its danger, but for the spirits that are said to linger there. Perhaps the most famous of these is the tale of the Phantom Bride. Witnesses describe her as a pale woman in a white gown, seen walking the roadside in the dead of night. She appears suddenly in the headlights, sometimes holding flowers, sometimes lifting her hand as if to beg for help. Drivers who stop say she climbs silently into the passenger seat, her presence cold, her eyes downcast. She never speaks. When they reach the next town, she vanishes, leaving the seat empty and the smell of lilies hanging faintly in the air. One of the earliest accounts dates back to the 1930s, when a logging truck driver swore he picked up such a woman near Haynesville. He drove nearly 20 miles with her at his side, unnerved by her silence but unwilling to abandon her on the road. When he pulled into a diner and turned to speak, she was gone. The seat beside him was empty, his jacket where she had sat damp as though touched by something colder than ice. The man never drove that stretch of Route 2A again. More recent reports echo the same details. In 2001, a college student returning from Presque Isle told police he picked up a young woman on the shoulder of the road just after midnight. She looked lost, shivering in the cold. He offered her a ride, and she accepted, whispering only one word: home. Minutes later, he looked away, then back, and she was gone. Shaken, he pulled into a gas station. The clerk there only nodded when he told the story. "You're not the first," the man said quietly. But the Phantom Bride is not the only ghost said to haunt Route 2A. Truckers tell of spectral rigs appearing without warning, headlights blazing in the rearview mirror. The phantom trucks roar down the narrow highway at impossible speeds, tailgating so close drivers can feel the heat of their lights on the back of their necks. And just as suddenly as they appear, they vanish, leaving behind only the echo of engines in the night air. A driver named Frank recounted one such experience in 1978. He was hauling a load southbound in the early hours of the morning when a massive rig appeared behind him, closing the gap in seconds. Frank pushed his truck faster, sweating as he tried to avoid being rear-ended. But when he rounded a bend, the headlights were gone. The road behind him was empty, stretching silent and black into the forest. Frank swore he could still smell burning oil, though his gauges showed nothing wrong with his own engine. There are other stories, too. Locals speak of children on the roadside, standing silently in groups, their faces pale and hollow. Some believe these are the ghosts of families killed in accidents during the logging boom, when entire wagons and trucks overturned on the treacherous road. Others speak of spectral hitchhikers, men in flannel shirts and heavy boots, carrying axes or packs, who flag down cars but vanish when approached. One of the most chilling accounts came from a pair of hunters in 1985. Driving late at night, they claimed they saw a man in a logging outfit standing in the middle of the road. His face was bloodied, his arm twisted unnaturally at his side. They slowed, thinking he was injured. But as their headlights hit him, his eyes glowed bright white, and then he dissolved into the darkness like smoke. The hunters turned their truck around and took the long way home. Route 2A has earned its reputation not only from folklore, but from a long history of tragedy. Newspaper archives are filled with reports of crashes, many fatal. In the 1950s alone, dozens of truckers lost their lives along the icy curves. A chilling poem written by Maine humorist Marshall Dodge once warned, "It's death on Haynesville woods," capturing the fear every driver carried when forced to make the trip. Skeptics argue that exhaustion, isolation, and the treacherous road itself explain the stories. Drivers on long hauls are prone to fatigue, hallucinations, and heightened fear. But those who have traveled Route 2A at night insist there is something more. The silence feels different here, the shadows too. Deep. Equipment malfunctions are common, radios cutting out, headlights dimming, compasses spinning without cause. Paranormal investigators who have spent nights along the route report cold spots that drop by 20 degrees in seconds, cameras shutting off inexplicably, and faint voices recorded in the trees whispering words like help and home. The people of northern Maine accept the legends as part of their landscape. They warn outsiders not to drive Route 2A at night, especially alone. Truckers share the warnings in hushed tones. If you see a bride in white, do not stop. If a truck appears in your mirror, keep driving and do not look back. And if you feel the air grow suddenly colder, pray you are not near the bridge where the dead still walk. Route 2A is more than a road. It is a graveyard stretched thin into pavement, a place where the lives lost to its curves and crashes linger, unable to move on. Every ghost, every phantom truck, every pale bride in the dark is a reminder of the price the road has taken. To this day, the accidents continue, and each tragedy seems to feed the legends, strengthening the belief that Route 2A is cursed. If you find yourself on this road at night, with the forest pressing close and the stars blotted out by black pines, remember that countless drivers before you have not returned. And if your headlights sweep across a pale figure in white, standing still at the roadside with flowers in her hands, know this: she has been waiting a very long time. And once she climbs into your car, she may never truly leave. Highway 101 runs like a spine down the western edge of the United States, tracing the Pacific coast through California's rugged cliffs, sprawling forests, and restless ocean shores. It is a road of beauty by day, a highway of endless horizons and salty breezes. But when the sun drops into the sea and the night swallows the land, Highway 101 transforms. Its long stretches of asphalt cut through wilderness where no light shines but the moon, and where the roar of the Pacific is drowned out by the endless hum of tires. Travelers whisper that this iconic road is more than just a passage between cities. It is a corridor lined with the restless dead. California's 101 has seen tragedy in every form. Centuries ago, native tribes suffered displacement along its route. In the 18th and 19th centuries, Spanish missionaries and settlers built their missions along the path, leaving behind stories of cruelty, disease, and mass graves. In modern times, accidents on its twisting curves and fog-bound stretches have claimed countless lives. All of this history lingers, woven into the very soil beneath the pavement. Locals say you don't just drive Highway 101, you pass through the memories of the dead. One of the most famous legends is that of the spectral hitchhiker. Drivers, particularly along the northern stretches near the redwood forests, describe seeing lone figures standing on the shoulder at night. Often, it is a young woman in tattered clothes, hair long and dripping as if she's just stepped from the ocean. Sometimes it is a man in outdated attire, thumb raised in the classic gesture of the hitchhiker. The figures look solid, real, until headlights hit them. Then their features blur and their bodies vanish like mist. In 1974, a trucker reported picking up such a hitchhiker near Crescent City. He described her as soaked to the bone, shivering, smelling faintly of salt and seaweed. She climbed into his cab without speaking. For nearly 15 miles, she sat motionless, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. Then, just as the truck crested a hill, she was gone. The seat was damp, her imprint still pressed into the cushion, but the woman had vanished into thin air. The trucker, a hardened man with 30 years on the road, refused to drive that stretch. Again, highway patrol officers have their own stories. One officer in the 1980s swore he pulled over to assist a stranded motorist on a foggy night. The car looked abandoned, its hazard lights blinking weakly. But when he approached, the driver's side door opened, and a pale man in a blood-stained shirt stumbled out, gasping for help. The officer reached for his radio. When he looked back, the man and the car were gone. The pavement where the vehicle had stood was bare, slick only with dew. The officer never filed the report officially, but colleagues confirm he told the story for years. Then there are the phantom cars. Travelers on 101's cliffside segments, particularly near Big Sur, tell of headlights appearing in their mirrors, speeding closer and closer, only to pass with impossible velocity and vanish into the night. Some describe cars that look decades old, 1950s sedans, 1930s coupes, even horse-drawn wagons of light racing alongside the modern traffic. In one chilling account from 1991, a family claimed a vintage black car roared past them on a blind curve, tires screeching. Seconds later, they braced for the sound of a crash below, but no sound came, and when they slowed, there was no wreck, no car, no tire tracks at all. The northern reaches of Highway 101, through Oregon and into California's redwoods, are perhaps the most unnerving. The trees form a cathedral of shadows, so tall and ancient they seem older than memory. Drivers here tell of seeing figures between the trunks, pale faces peering from the trees, men in logging clothes, women in pioneer dresses. Sometimes the figures step right onto the road, forcing drivers to swerve violently. When the cars stop, there is no one there, only the stillness of the forest and the rustling of branches high above. In Humboldt County, a region long haunted by tragedy, locals say the spirits of missing persons still linger along the 101. The county has one of the highest rates of disappearances in California, and many bodies have been found in shallow graves or washed ashore by the Eel River. Travelers claim to see ghostly figures walking barefoot along the highway at night, their eyes empty, their clothes torn. Paranormal investigators who have camped near the road report faint cries in the night, voices carried on the ocean wind that sound unmistakably human. Not all the hauntings are human. Along the Central Coast, near San Luis Obispo, multiple drivers have reported hitting phantom animals. Deer, coyotes, even massive elk appear suddenly in the headlights. Cars swerve, brakes scream, and drivers brace for impact, only to find they've struck nothing. One woman in 2008 insisted she hit a large buck, felt the thud against her bumper, and pulled over shaking. But when she got out, there was no damage to her car, no blood, no animal. The road behind her was empty. She refused to drive Highway 101 after dark again. Perhaps the darkest tale of all belongs to the Lady of the Cliffs. Along the perilous Big Sur section, where sheer drops fall hundreds of feet into the Pacific, witnesses describe a woman in a flowing white dress standing near the guardrails. She appears suddenly, her face hidden by long hair, her body swaying as if caught in an unseen tide. Some say she leaps into the void before their eyes, though no splash ever follows. Others claim she steps into the lane itself, forcing drivers to brake hard, only to dissolve into fog. Local legend ties her to a young woman who died in a car accident along the cliffs in the 1950s. Her body never recovered from the sea below. Whether ghost or echo, she continues to haunt the same stretch, her grief imprinted on the crashing waves. Highway 101's reputation is fed by its long, bloody history. Car crashes are tragically common, especially along its winding coastal stretches, where fog reduces visibility to mere feet. Entire families have been lost to head-on collisions. Vehicles have plunged off cliffs into the ocean, leaving no survivors. Fires have swept across sections of the road, taking homes and lives alike. It is no surprise that so much death has left a mark. Skeptics argue that the fog, exhaustion, and treacherous curves create illusions. That phantom headlights are tricks of moisture, that vanishing hitchhikers are the mind's way of filling in the dark. But those who've seen the apparitions insist there is no mistaking them. Too many stories repeat the same details. The wet woman who disappears from the seat, the phantom cars roaring off cliffs, the pale faces staring from the redwoods. Paranormal researchers have documented cold spots, unexplained voices, and sudden malfunctions along 101. One investigator in 2015 recorded a woman's voice whispering, "Help me," while parked near Big Sur at 3 a.m. He was alone, doors locked, his recorder running. The voice was clear, desperate, undeniably real. Highway 101 is a paradox. By day, a road of beauty, of sunlit vistas and towering trees. By night, a place of dread, where the veil between life and death seems thinnest. It is a road that has carried centuries of loss, native tribes uprooted, settlers buried, accident victims claimed by the asphalt and the sea. That weight lingers in its shadows. If you drive it after dark, when the fog rolls thick and the headlights carve only a narrow path through the void, remember this: you are not alone. Someone may be waiting by the roadside, thumb raised, eyes hollow. A car may blaze behind you, engine roaring, only to vanish into the sea. And on the cliffs above the Pacific, a woman in white may already be watching, her grief as eternal as the tide.